Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gen AI for DevOps Bootcamp. My name is Derek, and we're going to do a little vibe coding today. So what we've got is we've got this cool little React application here that is based on NIST 800-171. It's a compliance framework. It's just something that's interesting enough. And what we've got are controls here that are tied into AWS config, which you will need to have set up for this to work. But as you can see here, we've got some non-compliant resources, things like that, which we might be able to create some AI tools to take care of. Now in this application, as long as you pass in an OpenAI key, it will actually give you some remediation scripts, just suggested ways to remediate these things. And of course, we will build something to do this a little more automatic, but this is just kind of a way to see how it's all set up. So we've got that. This is two containers, a backend and a front end container, and we're going to need to get those to the cloud. Now, right now, as you can see, that's running on my local host. So in the dashboard here, I can see for this milestone here, deploy vulnerability dashboard. I've actually put these here on deck. You can see we've got push the containers to ECR, store secrets securely, and deploy EKS or ECS with Terraform. Now in this little session, I don't know how long it's going to go. We're going to see how it goes. I'm going to be deploying ECS. I'm going to be taking the easy route. I do actually like ECS a good bit, but if you prefer EKS or would really like to get your hands dirty, go ahead and do that. I do have some reference architecture in GitHub that you can check out. Although, to be perfectly honest, there are still a few hitches in it. It's not completely perfect, but I think it will get the job done if you need something to get started. However, once again, I will be using ECS, which is going to make life a lot easier. Now for the storing secrets securely, if you take a look at that, we need to make sure we're not persisting our secrets and API keys to state. Now, a lot of you may not know that there is a really great new feature called, what is it? It's called write-only arguments within Terraform. Now, this came out like 1.11, I think, so it's pretty recent. But thanks to those write-only arguments, what they do is they send the value to the cloud, but it doesn't come back. So basically, you don't end up persisting any of your keys or anything like that to state, which keeps your state clean and just removes that little bit of extra attack surface. So that's pretty cool. So we'll need to do that. One of the big hangups there, especially if you're using more native tools that don't have web searches or you don't have an MCP server installed, this tool, or this feature rather, actually is not going to be in their corpus of data because most LLMs' corpus of data is maybe 6 months to 18 months out. So if there's been anything that's been released in the time frame between now and then, they're not going to be able to use that. Now, again, Perplexity and a lot of others do have real-time corpuses of data, corpi, I don't know. They do have data that's pretty much right on the nose because, you know, they can use tools to search the web and things like that. But if you are using an older LLM or an LLM that does not have web searching features or the ability to use web searching tools, then you may find that it gets a little hung up on these tasks. Now, one of the ways to get around this is you can use the Terraform MCP server, which will have this in its documentation. So this will give your tool of choice access to all Terraform docs and the provider docs. And that's also going to help because the Docker provider's been updated a lot. The AWS provider's been updated a lot. In fact, these write-only values are only in later versions of the AWS provider, as well as later versions of Terraform. So that's going to be something you need to make sure you are ready for. So again, installing this Terraform MCP server is a really good idea. Now, I am using Windsurf. Now, one of the things that kind of delayed this bootcamp a little bit was me going back and forth trying to decide if I wanted to continue using Windsurf. It was just a major upheaval with Windsurf in a, I think it's called like a shell-quahire, like acquihire. Basically, they have turned Windsurf into a shell company. The theory is this was to avoid regulation. And by they, I mean big G, Google. Google ended up acquihiring in a way all of the major contributors to Windsurf, which sucks. I mean, I'm talking like everybody. I mean, the CEO is one of them. Now, they did leave Windsurf behind. They are licensing it, but Windsurf still has access to this licensing, which is a good sign. I'll be honest, I've used Cursor and Windsurf. Windsurf is just a more complete product. Cursor is probably a little more nuts and bolts. There's more knobs to turn, things like that. I think that's great for a lot of developers. For me, because I move between infrastructure and front end, back end, and everything so frequently, Windsurf has actually been a really good tool for me. It's also very good at research. Its tool callability and everything else is fantastic. It's got a plan mode, which is really cool. Basically, what that does is it allows the LLM to create a plan before it starts working. This is really cool. It also has a built-in browser that it can use to check things out. Now, we're not going to need a lot of that, but it is cool. Now, which one do I actually recommend? No idea. I refuse to pick a dog in this fight because honestly, I don't know how much longer Windsurf's going to be around, at least in this phase. Hopefully somebody picks it up. That would be awesome or even open sources it. That would be really, really, really cool. I think if somebody open sourced Windsurf and it got taken over, I think it could really disrupt what's going on. But there's some great tools out there, open code, there's Claude code. There's so many other wonderful tools you can use. So do not take my usage of Windsurf as an endorsement because it is 100% not. So anyway, with all of that said, I think it's about time to start planning this out and getting to some vibe coding. All right, so let's take a look at a quick little diagram of what we're going to build here. I will say this is quick and dirty, and yes, I use ChatGPT to do it. I use ChatGPT a lot as my chat assistant because honestly, I think as far as research, things like that goes, it's fantastic. So if we take a look at this lab here, deploy EKS or ECS with Terraform, got a little diagram right here, and I can actually make that a lot larger if need be. I'll even zoom in a little bit more just so make sure everybody can see that. So, it's pretty simple here. We've got AWS Secrets Manager that's going to need to be done. We've got our ECS task for the front end. We've got our ECS task for the back end. And, got anything else you want to throw out there? Go ahead. But these tasks are going to need to be able to communicate with each other, front end to back end. And then you're also going to need a load balancer for the front end. So we'll have an application load balancer there that's going to be accessing it on port 80. And then we'll need to launch an ECS cluster, of course, the backbone of everything. And we need to send these images to ECR. Now the ECS cluster is going to have a role that's going to give it access to ECR to pull those secrets. And then again, when we deploy ECR, we're going to need to get those containers to ECR. And to do that, we can use the Docker provider. There's not a HashiCorp managed one or a Docker managed one. The only one Docker has actually only manages its own cloud. So we're going to use a Kreuzverker, I believe is how you pronounce it. My German's not great. They are actually, I believe they've kind of abandoned it a little bit, but we'll have to see what's going on. I know they've been looking for someone to take over the project. So if anybody's out there, let's go. I think that'd be an awesome opportunity for some company to take control of that. But they have actually committed some really good fixes here lately. I know several of us have reached out to try to get them engaged again. So that's good to hear. We've got a Docker provider, so we're not going to have to use dirty Terraform provisioners to run, Docker scripts and bash scripts and things like that, because that is not the way you want to do your Terraform. Now, the only thing is there are a couple quirks with that provider, and hopefully our LLM is going to be able to navigate those. If not, we might have to step in there manually, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, awesome. We now have seen kind of what we're going to build. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and maximize this and mark that diagram complete. And we're going to move back to, as you can see now, that is in progress since we marked that diagram complete. Let's go ahead and get back to our push the containers to ECR. Now, I already have the containers built. As you can see here, those are finished here. I did not go the extra mile on them, but I just wanted to make sure we had containers that work. I'm leaving it up to you to make them as production ready as possible and to really dive into the nuts and bolts of this deployment. I'm going to do exactly what it takes to get it off the ground, pass the checks. But remember, this is your project. This is something you can showcase. This is, a real thing. You can actually go and take that control, that dashboard, everything, and build it up to be anything you want it to be. Rebadge it. It's completely open source. It is yours. Have a blast. Please use it for your portfolios. The only thing I ask is just tag me if you don't mind. Throw me in the docs somewhere. It doesn't matter. It could be a little footnote. But, anyway, that is all I've got to say about that. So let's start building. So I'm going to grab Windsurf back into the frame here. And as you can see, once again, I have installed the Terraform MCP server here. Now with Windsurf, it's pretty easy. First thing you need to do, actually, already got to move out of there. Come back over to, here we go, to the Terraform MCP server page here. So all I've done is, if you scroll down enough, you'll see somewhere, Docker. You can, yes, basically you can install with Go. I went ahead and used Docker though. It was much easier to do right here. This is for STDIO mode. Now, they didn't have streamable HTTP mode recently. This is something that is pretty new, which is awesome. I hope to play with this very soon. Hopefully sometime within the rest of this course, we'll start diving into this. But right now, we're just going to use STDIO mode because that's all that Windsurf needs, cursor, etc. And there are also instructions for cursor and everyone else to do. Now, if you want, you can always just copy it. And most of these tools are going to help you out here. So I'm going to keep things in chat mode. And again, I'm just going to use GPT 4.1. It also doesn't hurt that it's 0.25 times credits. That's a pretty solid model for 0.25 times credits instead of 1 or even more. 1.25 for Claude 3.7 Sonnet Thinking. It starts to get pretty expensive as you play around with that. Now, another question you might have is, how am I choosing my model? Did I have anything else other than, oh, I like GPT 4.1? Well, one thing I did was just kind of check the size of the code that I've got. And that, this is a very small application. Now, I can literally go something like, this is something I do a lot. Now, a lot of times you could totally just ask one of these models to go and counter lines of code or run all sorts of tools or whatever. But since I'm from an infrastructure background, honestly, I just wanted to speed up the stuff I know how to do already. So give me a one-liner bash script to count the characters in my code, just like that, something like that will be perfectly fine. There we go. Take a quick look at it. Yeah, we actually do want certain file types. In this case, let's go and just find all the TypeScript or JavaScript files and do that. And then, yeah, just simple WC. That looks good. I'm not seeing anything getting written. I'm not seeing rm-rf or anything stupid like that. So let's go ahead and I'm going to run that. Yep, this is very wrong. So what's probably going on here is, let's see, what did you grab? It grabbed something stupid here. Had it earlier, no problem. Let's see here. Wait, did it find from root? No. No, we're good. Let's see here. That number is way off. There we go. Nope. The number of characters is wrong. Maybe we should check words or lines. Yeah, let's go ahead and just check lines or words. Probably some sort of file out there with a ton of empty space or something like that got picked up. There's really no telling. So let's go ahead. Yep, WC-L. That's going to grab the lines. Let's go ahead and do that instead. Nope, that's still not right. Ah, there we go. We got it. All right, cool. Yep. Now I think we were missing these. Let's see. What is it we were missing? Yeah, TSX is what we were missing there. Those are two very big ones. So good. Now we've got it. And yes, I totally cut out about 5 minutes of missing that stupid file type. So, you know, if you want to go see it, maybe I'll show the outtakes one day, but probably not anytime soon. All right, cool. So now that we've got 887 lines, we know what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and give me the estimated token count for these 887 lines. Yeah, you know, give or take. I mean, I'll tell you, like, sometimes I've heard 100 characters, give or take, is 75 token, or 100 words is 75 tokens. I've heard a lot of different things. You know, this is just a very rough estimate, but basically what I'm saying is 8,000 tokens. Any LLM's got the context window for you. All of them. I believe 4.1 now has a 1,000,000 token window. Gemini has 1,000,000. Your Claude's, you know, your absolute best coder out there, Claude Sonnet 4 and Claude Opus 4, currently best coder out there. Also, they only have 200,000 context window. And so, you know, you really don't need that much of a token window. And if you go back and poke around a little bit on the internet, you'll actually find a lot of really good articles that kind of point to some interesting things. So basically, one of the big things is as you increase your token count, the accuracy starts to get worse because it's just got to figure out how to crawl through so much data. Now, if you take a look at another interesting thing, which will help your prompting, if you are cramming a bunch of stuff into the prompt, basically LLMs get real excited in the beginning. Right here, this is position of the document. They uploaded a whole bunch of documents. In the beginning of the document, it gets real excited. Then it kind of loses focus, and then it catches up again in the end. It kind of has some recency bias here. It's like, oh, wait, yeah, this is what I need. I need the stuff at the end. I do remember that stuff in the beginning, but everything in the middle just gets a little bit hazy. So that's something to keep in mind. Whenever you're prompting, sometimes it's good to finish off with a confirmation like, so remember, we're only working in these files, or remember, we're only doing this thing, etc. So it doesn't get lost. So do keep that in mind whenever you are performing larger operations with larger context windows. So anyway, back to what I was talking about before I diverged for a solid 10 to 15 minutes. Let's go back to, let me just head back to, where are they? Where are those MCP servers at? Ah, they're down here. They just moved some things around. Let's take a look. So we've got Terraform right here. As you can see, I've got it installed. Now, if you want to get it installed pretty easily, you can actually just tell an LLM to give you what to do. Now, things like this, I'm usually going to keep in chat mode. I don't want it running too many tools just to do stuff I know how to do. Also, we're talking Docker here. Things can get very complicated. And sometimes these LLMs are going to look at the instructions and they're going to get confused. So there's actually a pretty good chance it might accidentally run the HTTP mode instead of the STDIO mode. But let's see what it can do because I'm super curious. Now I'm going to start a new conversation. I like to keep my conversations focused. Remember that context window thing. A lot of times it tries to cram a lot of this conversation into the context window, which means that it might get confused. It might want to go and reference this for some reason and think we're trying to find lines or something like that. But We don't want that. So I'm just going to start a new conversation. And in fact, I'm going to delete that old one because it is a waste of time now. I'm going to just paste in this link and say, give me the commands to run a Docker container for the Terraform MCP server in stdio mode, just like that. All right, it did not mention pulling the repository down. It's actually just saying do a Docker pull. I didn't even remember seeing that in there. So let's see if it hallucinated or not. I'm curious to see. Hey, nope, it was real. But let me go take a look and be sure. I'll head back here because I don't remember that being the exact command. No, it actually just, it doesn't mention running stdio after it. So I think it's actually pulling this from the Docker hub is what it's done. So it did not listen to a word I just said right there. That's interesting. Let's see if I can prompt it to fix it. Okay, those are the old instructions from Docker Hub. Please use GitHub's instructions. Let's see if it'll fix itself. This is going to be interesting. Almost. Still almost. But it didn't quite work. Let me go and look in here if that's even... All right, let's see here. Dev stdio. Yeah, no, it's not in here. So it's still hallucinating, getting its sources all sorts of screwed up. So sometimes when this happens, I get curious, and I'm kind of curious if maybe either O3 will be smarter. I know 4 is probably going to be smarter for Sonnet 4. Let's go ahead and see if O3 is smarter. I'm super curious. Okay, try that again. Make sure to stick to the docs. All right, come on, O3, let's go. So yeah, interesting enough there. It says it's actually using the Windsurf browser. Okay, error, didn't work. So sometimes it will actually open a Chrome instance and run it. Don't know what happened there. It broke, honestly, with Windsurf. Who knows? All right, let's take a look. Yep, all right. Now it's getting it right. Docker run -I, this is the exact thing now. So apparently, for whatever reason, 4.1, which I have found to have some problems with this type of stuff. 4.1 is interesting sometimes. Stepping it up to O3 will absolutely fix a lot of the weird hallucination problems or confusions that 4.1 has. Now, one thing could be true. It could be that because of 4.1's gigantic context window, perhaps it ended up pulling in too much context and it might have gotten confused. There's a good chance that it ended up looking up too much stuff. I can go back up and see if it tells me what it did, but yeah, it does not have a thinking mode that's helping me out here. Luckily, O3 did a lot more thinking, let me know exactly what it's doing. So that was a lot easier to check out. You can see here some interesting stuff here. You can actually look at the chunks that it looked at. But I will say, if you're trying to get speed, then you're going to be a lot happier with something like 4.1 or something, a non or less thinking model. I'd say O3 is more of kind of a medium thinking or just kind of a small thinking, but you know, because there is a high thinking model that takes forever to work, but it does do the job whenever you need it to, for sure. So it's something you can go to. I know most of the cursors and everything out there in the world should have it, but yeah, high reasoning, sorry, not thinking, high reasoning. You've got O3 Mini, not something I'm really interested in, and then O3. O3 is probably the best bang for the buck you're going to get at 1x credits. Once OpenAI decided to drop its price substantially, that was a huge boon to the model, and you know, it just became insanely popular overnight thanks to that. So anyway, cool. So we saw that we can access exactly what it uses and puts into its context. I will say Windsurf is really good at this stuff. So if you have questions about your own models and your own agents and things like that, it's giving you a lot of hints here on how you might want to do things. So keep that in mind. All right, cool. So we saw how to run that MCP server. Again, I've already got it running. We're not going to dwell on this any further, but it did give us some really cool insight into how these models work and how switching models can sometimes help and how sometimes it will absolutely hallucinate on you and screw things up. So what I did is I just followed the MCP server setup. There's a configure right here. I just added it just as it was in the instructions. You could, of course, again, use an LLM to do this, but that was kind of silly. So I added that in. If you want to add other database or, you can add all sorts of MCP servers to bring in all sorts of docs, whether you want to bring in React docs or you want to bring in OpenTofu docs. OpenTofu, I believe, does have, I know they have their docs ready to go on Markdown. There are some really good tools out there and sites out there you can use to bring everything in. So feel free to jump out there and investigate that type of stuff because it's a lot of fun, but I'm going to try to keep things as simple as I can. Now, I will be honest, we're going to use 4.1 a little bit longer, but if it does this again, I think we're going to go on to O3 because that was kind of embarrassing, to be honest. I told it exactly what to do, and it didn't want to listen, which is something you're going to encounter quite frequently. So with all of that said, hopefully we can start building now. We've got our very simple tools in place, and it's about time to start kicking things off.